Welcome dear students. Today we are going to learn about the sustainable development and the indicators of sustainable development. In addition to conflicts, political and socio-economic instability, the general evolution of humanity over the past few decades has resulted in increasingly unfavorable climatic changes and natural disasters. Human activity has had a detrimental effect on the ecosystem, putting the planet's survival and that of the future generations in jeopardy. These circumstances have shown behavioral shifts towards more rational and effective resource management, which will relieve pressure and have a positive impact on the environment. Responsible behavior is thought to guarantee the long-term exploitation of resources without endangering the future generations. The idea of sustainable development changed during the course of the previous century, particularly in the 1980s. The notions of development, socio-economic growth in accordance with ecological limitations needs redistributing resources to ensure everyone's quality of life and future generations. Possibility of long-term resource usage to ensure the necessary quality of life for future generations form the basic concept of sustainable development. The triple bottom line concept is the foundation of sustainable development. It suggests striking a balance between three pillars of sustainability. The first pillar is the environmental sustainability, which is concerned with maintaining the quality of the environment necessary for conducting economic activities and people's quality of life. Talking about the social sustainability, which aims to uphold equality and human rights, preserve cultural identity, respect for racial and religious diversity, and economic sustainability necessary to maintain the natural, social, and human capital required for income and living standards. All of these pillars must be in balance for there to be complete sustainable development. This is a necessary condition, but it is difficult to meet because in order to achieve its objectives, each sustainability pillar must respect the interests of others and avoid throwing them out of balance. Thus, while one pillar of sustainable development may become sustainable, others may not, particularly in the case of ecological sustainability, which is essential to development's ability to function as a whole. In its literal sense, sustainability refers to the ability to sustain some entity, result, or process over time, as well as engaging in the activities that do not exhaust the resources on which that capacity depends. Since this is the broad definition of sustainability, all human endeavors and commercial operations can be understood in an equivalent manner. Therefore, each activity can be performed in volume and variations without causing self-destruction, allowing for long-term repetition and rejuvenation in accordance with the general definition. Rational resource use and renewal necessitate changes in the producer and consumer behavior. Otherwise, the pressures of economic development gradually deplete these resources. The idea of sustainable development has been heavily focused on strong sustainability in recent years, increasingly approaching strong environmental sustainability due to the depletion of natural resources and unfavorable effects, since environmental destruction has not been stopped. In 2015, the General Assembly of the United Nations formally adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which provides a framework for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. As part of this agreement, all United Nations member states decided on the Sustainable Developmental Goals, which can be used to provide an indication and measure of progress towards the main objective of sustainable development. The process involved numerous stakeholders and resulted in a consensus. The Sustainable Development Goals represent a shared expression of stakeholder needs at a global level, balancing economic, social, and environmental development. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals comprehend themes such as ending world poverty to undertaking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts by 2030, and are outlined in the United Nations document, Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So the first Sustainable Developmental Goal aims at no poverty, ending poverty in all its forms everywhere. Sustainable Developmental Goal 2, Zero Hunger, which aims at ending hunger, achieving food security and improved nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Sustainable Developmental Goal 3, Good Health and Well-being, which ensures healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Sustainable Developmental Goal 4, Quality Education, that ensures inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Sustainable Development Goal 5, Gender Equality, that aims at achieving gender equality and empower all women and girls. Sustainable Development Goal 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, that ensures availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Sustainable Development Goal 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, that ensures access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. Sustainable Development Goal 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, that promotes sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Sustainable Development Goal 9, Industry, Innovation and Infrastructure, that aims at building resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. Sustainable Development Goal 10, Reduced Inequalities, that aims at reducing inequality within and among countries. Sustainable Development Goal 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, which aims at making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. Sustainable Development Goal 12, Responsible Consumption and Production, that ensures sustainable consumption and production patterns. Sustainable Development Goal 13, Climate Action, that aims at taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Sustainable Development Goal 14, Life Below Water, that aims at conserving and sustainably use the oceans, seas and marine resources for sustainable development. Sustainable Development Goal 15, Life on Land, that aims at protecting, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. Sustainable Development Goal 16, Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions, that promotes peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels. Sustainable Development Goal 17, Partnerships for the Goals, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. In addition to meeting the demands of present and future stakeholders and advancing the goal of sustainable development for society as a whole, the Sustainable Development Goals are designed to encourage the implementation and integration of sustainability within organizations across the globe. The Sustainable Development Goals aim for a combination of economic development, environmental sustainability and social inclusion, and thus, by definition, must embrace a wide range of targets and indicators. The interlinkages and integrated nature of the Sustainable Development Goals are critical to attain sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Goals are global and represent an unified set of international priorities. However, at the same time, they can be adjusted to the different national realities, cultures, demographic dynamics, and ways of life of various societies in the world, respecting the targets set by each country to advance in the framework of the 2030 Agenda. Thus, each Sustainable Development Goal is an umbrella term that can be multifaceted and contain numerous policy goals. The 2030 Agenda is organized around the 5 P's of development. These are people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships, which are essential for humanity and represent a call to take action in the eradication of hunger, seek the protection of the planet, and ensure that all people live in peace and prosperity. In developing countries, the assessment of the progress made in the 2030 agenda is less encouraging, and corruption looms large as one of the main risks for achieving the goals related to economic growth and the reduction of poverty because of the diversion of resources further accentuates inequality. Regarding the country's current progress in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, it is also necessary to consider that the global COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021 has forced many countries to reset their priorities and relocate investments to care for their population's health. For the first time since the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, the Global Average Sustainable Development Goal Index score for 2020 has decreased from the previous year. The circular economy, as opposed to the current linear economy, is seen as the sustainable economic system, where economic growth is decoupled from resource use through the reduction and recirculation of natural resources. The circular economy concept attracts increasing attention of governments, scholars, companies, and citizens as a necessary step to achieve sustainable development. Various approaches have been put out to transition from a linear economy to a circular economy. Industrial actors are the primary implementers of these tactics. The strategies are based on various concepts such as sustainable and eco-design, energy and material efficiency measures, business model innovation, industrial symbiosis, and strategies defined within the 3 R's waste hierarchy: reduce, reuse, recycle, sometimes expanded to 11 different R strategies. Even though the focus of most circular strategies is to increase the material circularity of a system, such circularity should be simultaneously sustainable for the environment, economy, and society. The world is on the verge of an environmental calamity due to resource depletion, pollution, climate change, and increased demand for energy, food, water, and other resources. Globally, the current growth trajectory is unsustainable at current consumption levels, making the shift to sustainable consumption and pollution is essential for attaining sustainable growth. The aim of sustainable consumption and pollution is to highlight constraints on resources, which include energy, clean air, and clean water. Sustainable consumption and pollution is required to improve the lives of the world's poorest people, who the World Bank now estimates to make up roughly 10% of the global population. It can also help in the transition to a low-carbon green economy. Alongside other approaches to reducing poverty, it can offer the structure for initiatives aimed at enhancing living standards and generating job possibilities. Participation from stakeholders from a range of global economic sectors is necessary for sustainable consumption and pollution to succeed. In order to assure increases in output, reductions in pollution, and consumer education on sustainable consumption, government at all levels must be involved in the establishment and implementation of legislation. In other words, every group in the society and every individual has a part to play in the shift towards a sustainable economy. Now we are going to discuss about the India's progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable development requires every nation to prioritize their targets and carefully implement various schemes and programs in accordance with local challenges, capacities, and available resources. India follows a holistic approach for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by implementing a comprehensive array of schemes. Current flagship policies and programs of Government of India, such as Swachh Bharat Mission, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, and Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana have substantially contributed to India's progress in this regard. Now we are going to talk about the indicators of sustainable development. Decisions are supposed to be aided by indicators. They achieve this through quantification and simplicity. Indicators serve a variety of purposes. Simplifying, clarifying, and providing policymakers with aggregated information can result in better decisions and more effective actions after a thorough debate of sustainable development indicators. They can support the measurement and calibration of progress towards sustainable development goals, as well as the integration of knowledge from the physical and social sciences into decision making. They can serve as warning flag to avert negative social, cultural, and environmental effects. They are also helpful instruments for exchanging beliefs, concepts, and ideas. The United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1992 recognized the important role that indicators could play in helping countries make informed decisions concerning sustainable development. At the international level, the Commission on Sustainable Development improved its work program on indicators of sustainable development in 1995. We will now discuss the core sustainable development indicators that cover the economic, environmental, social, and institutional areas. So now we are going to discuss about the social indicators. That first includes the equity. One of the main principles of sustainable development is social fairness, which recognizes individuals and their quality of life as a primary concern. The degree of justice and inclusivity in the allocation of resources, provision of opportunities, and making the decisions is all part of equity. Comparable environment opportunities and social services such as those related to justice, health, and education are also included. The idea may have application within communities as well as across national boundaries. Reducing poverty, distributing environment and income, promoting gender, ethnic and age inclusivity, granting access to natural and financial resources, and creating opportunities for intergenerational growth are all important challenges in the pursuit of social equality. In addition to widespread and systematic issues with unstable livelihoods, malnutrition and poor health, illiteracy, civic unrest connected to violence and war, and corruption, impoverished individuals may feel helpless and alone. Overuse of resources and degradation of the land are caused by the concentration of rural, impoverished people on marginal land. Talking about the health, sustainable development and health are intimately related. Population health is influenced by various factors such as access to health services, proper nutrition, and a safe food supply, clean living circumstances, disease control, and a safe and clean water supply. On the other hand, fast urbanization, natural and man-made disasters, poverty, and lack of knowledge and education can all make health issues worse. When a significant section of the population suffers from poor health and has limited access to healthcare facilities, development cannot be accomplished or maintained. A clean atmosphere is critical to the health and welfare of the population. Along with excessive consumption, unsustainable economic growth can lead to environmental degradation, which can have a negative impact on human health. Through community-based, scientifically sound, and socially acceptable methods, societal interventions seek to promote primary healthcare systems associated to the supply of clean water, adequate sanitation, and safe food. Talking about the education, it is commonly acknowledged that education as a continuous process throughout the life is essential to achieving sustainable development. It is essential to addressing fundamental human needs, attaining equity, developing capacity, facilitating information access, and advancing knowledge. It is also acknowledged that education can be used to shift production and consumption habits towards more sustainable ones. Formal and informal education are both seen as necessary for society and individuals to realize their full potential. Regardless of a nation's degree of progress, there is a strong correlation between the overall level of education achieved and the persistence of poverty. So talking about the population, For those making decisions about how people, resources, the environment and the development are interrelated, the population offers a crucial contextual reference on sustainable development. Population shifts are important indicators for nations seeking to lower poverty, advance economically, safeguard the environment and transition to more environmental friendly production and consumption practices. The stable levels of fertility can have a very beneficial effect on the quality of life. The slower rate of population growth in many nations has given them more time to prepare for future population rise. Talking about the housing, one of the key elements of sustainable development is adequate housing. Adequate housing is a major factor in creating communities that are safer, more equitable, productive and healthier. Unemployment, a lack of proper planning and funding, and an overwhelming concentration of people have an impact on living circumstances, particularly in metropolitan regions. Migrating from rural to urban areas makes this problem worse and encourages the growth of slums and informal settlements. Poverty, homelessness, ill health, social exclusion, unstable and insecure families, violence, environmental degradation, and heightened susceptibility to disasters are all linked to poor living circumstances. So, talking about the security, criminal justice and crime prevention play a crucial role in the development process. The advancement of justice is essential for social stability, security, peace, human rights and long-term sustainable development, and it is the foundation of civil society, good governance and democracy. The objectives of eradicating poverty, economic investment, environmental management, gender equality, participation and sustainable livelihoods all depend on such a stable and safe environment. The acknowledgement of security as a signpost of sustainable development is indicative of the increasing emphasis placed on security encompassing crime prevention in the framework of sustainable development in recent times. So, talking about the various environmental indicators. Firstly, the atmosphere. Climate change, stratospheric ozone depletion, acidification, eutrophication, urban air quality, and tropospheric ozone levels are among top atmospheric challenges. These problems have an impact on ecosystem health, human health, biodiversity, and economic harm. Numerous effects are worldwide, long-lasting, irreversible, and have an impact on next generations. Enhancing the scientific foundation for managing uncertainties, stopping stratospheric ozone depletion, managing transboundary air pollution, and encouraging more sustainable and effective energy use, transportation, consumption, industrial development, and land and marine resource use are the majority of the hotly debated environmental issues. The primary human activities linked to atmosphere change are related to the use of fossil fuels for transportation and energy generation. Furthermore, industrial operations, garbage disposal, intensive agriculture and deforestation are among the land use changes that lead to air pollution. On the other hand, ecosystems found in forests serve as important sinks for greenhouse gas emissions. The use of renewable energy, fuel substitution, and increased efficiency have all contributed to some gains in efficiency, but overall increases in energy use and transportation have resulted in rising emission levels. It is commonly acknowledged that climate change poses a severe threat to the environment, and unsustainable patterns of production and consumption are mostly to blame. Talking about the land, in addition to actual area and topography, land also refers to the natural resources that are found there, such as water, mineral deposits, soil, and populations of flora and fauna. Unsustainable land use has an impact on these resources as well as the atmosphere and the marine ecosystems. Due to growing human demands, land is becoming scarce resource, especially high-quality land for primary biomass production and conservation. By using a sustainable approach, conflicts between competing land uses will be resolved, access to land and rights to it will be addressed, and productivity will rise while the environment and natural resources are preserved. This approach is supported by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity, the Habitat Agenda of the Second International Conference on Human Settlements, and the Plan of Action of the World Food Summit. Talking about the freshwater, ecosystems, economic growth, and human existence all depend on freshwater. It provides water for home use, food, cultivation, industry, fishing, hydropower, navigation, and leisure. The production of food, the mitigation of flood risks, and the filtration of pollutants are among the ecological services provided by freshwater systems. Water resource management is closely linked to global issues of health, poverty, climate change, deforestation, desertification, and land use change. There are concerns about the long-term sustainability of water in many parts of the world. Water use has been growing at more than twice the population rate, and a number of regions are already chronically short of water. The freshwater indicators in the core set capture the two essential dimensions of quality and quantity. So, talking about the biodiversity, in addition to genetic variations within species, biological diversity also includes variation within and between species, communities, habitats, and ecosystems. The diversity of genes, species, and ecosystems provides vital goods and services that are necessary for human well-being. Preserving biodiversity contributes to the continuity of Earth's natural ecological processes, which are essential for the survival of all species. Significant alterations, depletion, or loss of biodiversity can have far-reaching ecological and ethical ramifications in addition to having major effects on the economy, society, and culture. Approximately 80% of the requirements of the world's poor and over 40% of the global economy depends on biological diversity. Now let's talk about the economic indicators. That includes the economic structure. Economic growth and sustainable development are significantly influenced by trade and investment. Enhancing market accessibility, transferring financial and technological resources, and providing debt relief are essential in helping developing nations achieve sustainable development goals. The exploitation of natural resources, poverty, and production and consumption are all closely related to the rate of economic growth or lack of it. Making sure that economic expansion promotes social justice and prevents environmental deterioration is a significant task. Trade liberalization, fostering an environment that supports trade, giving developing nations access to new and increased financial resources, and supporting macroeconomic policies that support the environment and development are all essential to promoting economic performance within the framework of sustainable development. It can stimulate economic diversification, improve the efficiency of resource allocation, reduce environmentally unsound trade restrictions, and encourage the transfer of cleaner, more efficient technology. Talking about the consumption and production patterns. Degradation of global ecosystem and ongoing depletion of natural resources are mostly caused by unsustainable patterns of production and consumption, especially in industrialized nations. It is commonly known that the Earth cannot sustain the global consumption levels of industrialized nations. Furthermore, developing nations' options for production and consumption in the now and the future are impacted by such high levels of consumption. The adoption of more sustainable lifestyles necessitates the coordinated efforts of producers, consumers, and governments. It calls for a greater commitment to satisfying the needs of the impoverished, a decrease in the emphasis on material consumption, an increased emphasis on resource and energy efficient technology, and a concentration on economic systems that take social and environmental costs into account, macronutrient measures that benefit the environment. So now we are going to talk about the institutional framework. In order to promote and carry out sustainable development, an institutional framework within the proper legal and policy tools is needed. The incorporation of environmental, social and economic aspects is a crucial characteristic of these tools. Countries should enhance socio-economic and environmental conditions and lessen possible causes of international conflict by implementing international treaties and effective sustainable development policies. Talking about the institutional capacity, a nation's ability to move forward towards sustainable development is mostly based on the capacities of its institution and population. A nation's human, scientific, technological, organizational, institutional and resource capabilities can all be used to measure its sustainable development capacity. In terms of sustainable development, institutional capacity improves participatory planning, execution and monitoring. Gaining more capacity enhances a community's ability to consider important issues, assess potential policies and methods for implementation and recognize obstacles. Thank you for joining today's lecture. Hope you found it informative and engaging.